Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. It has been a busy and stressful week, all things considered, so I'm ready to chill out with a little bit of a Q&A. I don't have too much else to say because I'm releasing videos pretty much independently on every single thing I would say here. Besides, I'll probably get some questions about patch 6.1 in the comment section below. So with that, let's check it out. Thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon. I almost slipped over my tongue there. Thank you. Thank you for our sponsors over on Patreon for supporting. They don't have to. All my content is free here on the YouTube channel, so anyone over there is just choosing to do so out of their own goodwill. So thank you to them, and yeah, thank you to our patrons of Darkness, Khuja, Janova, and Kurenai Oni. With that, let's get started. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hi, Haps. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. What mechanisms are there in-game to provide feedback to players about their performances, or any way other than Sky, Sea, Stone? General observations about people's play is usually the best way to go about it. How would I put this? So, without using any third-party tools like ACT, generally players who know what they're doing can spot mistakes that are happening pretty readily. A great example, I was in an Endsinger Extreme today, and I noticed that the warrior is falling to 7,000 health every single tank buster. So I obviously, as somebody who's played tank and who's played heal, I can identify that that person isn't using tank cooldowns. So when you see things like that, it's pretty recognizable, just surface level things that people aren't doing. The only thing you can reasonably do is make a suggestion. But not many people are that amenable to them, as I've seen in the past. Now, as for performance overall, if you are willing to use third-party tools, honestly, just FF logs is normally a pretty good call. That gives them a baseline understanding of where they stand compared to everybody else. And then you can actually use the tools of the people who are performing at a top level, compare it to your actual performance, and it gives you kind of an idea of what train of thought those people are going through, how they're timing things, where they're placing things, and how accurate their button presses are. Because a lot of people, when they've got nerves, the button presses go all over the place. You forget to press things. Pretty normal things overall. Now, XIV analysis is I'd say pretty decent tool, but I feel like a lot of people look at XIV analysis and they don't pull the information from it. They don't extrapolate the information that it's trying to give them as feedback all too well. Not that they don't accept it or that it's wrong. It just doesn't translate to learning, maybe, is the way I would think of it. But I mean, as long as you take any sort of step to improving yourself, to noticing that you need improvement, generally the next step is just to, try a little bit. So it sounds like your friend already has kind of made themselves aware that their performance was under par, and that obviously they'd be looking to rectify it. So that's probably good enough. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Mrhappy, hope you had a pleasant weekend. Weekend wasn't as good as the week, but hey, I'm just doing. I was wondering what you thought about the difficulty of the new Extreme trial, specifically how it compares to Pandemonium Savage. Cleared 1 through 3 several hours, and I want to know what I'm getting into before I commit. Extremes are never as bad as Savages. Some people occasionally compare Extremes like day 1 or 2 to a Savage, like maybe the first or the second one, depending on the nature of the fight. And I'd say at some points in history that's been applicable. I don't think this one is the case. I think this is still generally a good stepping stone into Savage. A lot of recoverability, minus one mechanic in particular. And it's kind of similar to Zodiark. A lot of it you can just follow the Dorito through, and then the rest of it is kind of really common sense, basic end game things to understand. Spreading and clock positions and light parties and things along those lines. So if you've done Zodiark and Hydaelyn, or even if you've done any Extreme before, there's no reason this one should really pose that much more of a threat than any of those prior. Hashtag Mondays with Mrhappy. Hey, Happy, thanks for all the content. Appreciate all you do. Thank you. I have a fun question for you today. Well, I'll be the judge of that. In the Shadowbringers trailer, we see the Warrior of Light switch classes mid-battle with the Sin Eater. I know that Yoshida says anything in trailers could be a red herring. Of course, wouldn't have had that in gameplay. What do you think the Warrior of Light could switch jobs on the fly like that canonically? I just think the concept is cool. I've actually seen people unironically suggest they should make that a gameplay mechanic. And Like, okay, I get that the fantasy of it's fairly cool. That's something that would actually probably work in a single player game. Wouldn't be that unlike an action version of Lightning Returns, because yeah, you can basically job change on the fly in that. In fact, all the 13 games with the paradigm shifting, as far as I'm concerned. It's one of those really cool fantasy ideas, but in an MMO, I really don't like the idea or think it would pan out. So maybe if they make a single player 14 one day, that'll be a job mechanic, but until that day, it's gonna have to keep being a fever dream. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Oh no, do I have to sneeze? Look into the light. Look into the light. Come on. Come on. No, go away. Come back. So it's gonna be there forever. Hello there. Hope all is going well with you. 2 questions today, my good sir. With all the job changes and adjustments we've seen in 0.0 and 0.1, do you think now is a good time to return to the Versus series? Yes. That was actually something we were specifically waiting on, was 0.1. I sometimes want to do them before 0.1, but realistically 0.1 and 0.2 are normally pretty heavy on the changes. And if I always wanted to, I could do another one. But yeah. I'll probably get the range physical one out prior to Ultimate. Hoping there's no job changes in Ultimate that would sway that. But before 6.2, we'll probably do a fair many of them. And honestly, again, if they do make changes, I'd like to revisit the mid-expansion. That way I could give people updated comparisons between the jobs. But we'll see. I might have to wait till after Ultimate just to make sure. But I don't suspect there'll be any PvE job changes anytime soon. And with how serious PvP is, I might have to do a versus PvP equivalent as well. I would probably want to outsource some of that information to people like Brian Ricardo and One and a few other people in the PvP community. Since I won't know everything, it'll be a lot of hearsay, it'll be a lot of early perception, so of course I have to make sure that it's closer to accurate. 2, do you plan on there you go, PvP videos. Yeah, so big thing with PvP. I'm obviously going to make a thoughts video. I have been pretty much doing it non-stop, and I do have some feedback in regards to things that I think could use some improvement still. But it's a very, very, very big improvement over PvP in Final Fantasy XIV in the past. There's a lot of positives. And the few negatives knock it down just a bit, but I don't feel like it takes away from my desire to do it. It's similar gripes that I might even have in PvE in regards to responsiveness of certain skills. And they've always shown a propensity for adjusting those things in the future. But one thing I really want to do, and something I'll actually be working on right after I record this, is starting to incorporate YouTube Shorts into the channel. I think PvP, and honestly even my raids and whatnot, probably pretty conducive to the idea of YouTube Shorts. I already have a few pretty decent ideas, and it makes for another way for my channel to contribute Final Fantasy XIV content. It doesn't even have to only be Final Fantasy XIV content, but it's I think that's a good place to start at the very least. So get used to the whole YouTube Shorts thing, and then see if I can work in anything else of interest, if I find that there is anything else of interest. So, yeah, definitely. The answer is yes. Hashtag Monday with Mr. Happy. Hey, Hap, how's is it going? How's is it going? Sorry, I can't read. I can't speak, actually, would be more accurate. It's going all right. It's doing all right. I'm doing all right. See? Told you. I'm screwed. For my question, I was wondering, what would be your opinion on the more difficult version of 24? Oh, I've gotten this question a million times. I am not a huge fan of the idea. I think once in a while, it's fine. Delubrum and Baldesion were pretty good examples of doing something large scale once in a while, but I also don't think I'd want a harder version of the 24-mans I've already been doing. I actually think I'd rather they continue this route of making entirely different large-scale raid content like they have with those two. And those aren't even 24, those are 48, which I think might be a little excessive. I wouldn't be surprised to see them bring it down to 24 just because the 48 is, heck of a time. But at the same time, it's not really hard for the world first tier people to, I guess, find bodies to fill those spaces. But yeah, I mean, you hit on the points right here. You know, I'm not a big fan of the large party size. I think it's stressful. I think it's unfair to the people who coordinate because all of the pressure is being put on them. And then there's always people who don't really feel like they're pulling their weight or are not maybe of the same mindset. And that happens with 8-man groups. So with larger groups, it's even harder. There's a lot of room there's a lot more room for downsides than there are for upsides, other than the grandeur of actually doing this super large scale raid. So the answer is yes and no. Now, no to the idea of the current ones we have, but yes to the idea of more unique, large-scale raid instances like Delubrum Savage. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Happy. Hope you're doing well. Same to you. I fall in love with the new PvP mode and changes. I've also liked a lot of the changes to help gear content to support solo players. However, I'm extremely disappointed I cannot queue with friends for the new PvP mode. I understand balancing a reason for solo queue, but do you think they'll introduce duo or 5-man for the new PvP mode? I think duo queue for casual is possible. I have a feeling, and this is really based on... It's based on a history that I don't think is reflected in the current design for PvP. But I don't think you'll ever see more than solo queue for Crystalline Conflict. There's a couple of reasons. One, doing duo or triple queues even, obviously throws a huge wrench in the queuing system itself. They have to now take that into consideration when matching parties together. You don't want to match 5 solo queues against, a bunch of against a trio queue or a duo queue, because there's already massive advantages when stuff like that comes together. And then for pre-mades, it would have to be pre-made versus pre-made. So in the past, when they tried doing the pre-made queues, they ran into an issue where they were dividing their player base, and their player base was already kind of small in PvP. So the question becomes, is it possible with the interest in PvP now, or I guess after we've seen it pan out for a little while, to effectively separate those queues without feeling like you're alienating any portion of your player base or reducing the volume of players that are actually queuing for one particular mode? I don't think they're ever going to look at the number of people playing and go, yes, that is a permanent decision we will make. Because I think they also know, deep down, the second people decide they don't want to PvP in 14 or they don't like whatever's happened, they will drop it faster than any other content in the game. That's just what has happened in the past. Oh, Rival Rings release. Wow, I really like this new mode. It's cool. Week later, I don't want to do it. Feast, wow, we have a competitive mode with ranked, and I don't want to do it anymore. It's really, really, really hard to convince the 14 community to participate in PvP, and I'm not going to take a recency biased fueled opinion that the new PvP mode is good and has great long-term possibility. We're all going to say that because we all want it. A lot of us want it, and a lot of us are choosing to believe it because we're having fun right now. It is something that will take time to effectively analyze and really grasp if it is what we think it is. So I know it's a lot of explanation just saying no, I don't think they'll do it, but the reasons I feel always need to be extrapolated upon, because otherwise it just sounds like I'm saying, no, you can't have it. Brr. By the way, if you see me looking over here in the middle of the video, while I'm actually answering, I'm watching Dyrus try to get Diamond. He's in Plat 1 right now. So just watching PvP on the side. So that's, that should be indicative of the time that I'm having with it. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Good evening, morning. It's like late afternoon for me now, and it'll be morning tomorrow. So yeah, you'll get that one. Yeah. Hope that it finds you in good spirits this day. Yeah, I'm doing all right. I got to Diamond in PvP today, so despite the fact that I've had an otherwise pretty shit weekend, I'm in a pretty good mood thanks to that. So PvP hacks are online as of this post. Yes, I mean, there's nothing new there. There's always been PvP hacks in 4. There's going to be PvP hacks in every game. What's the best way to bring it up in the official forum? Sounds a bit awkward. I wouldn't want to get banned for just bringing this up. You won't get banned for bringing it up, but bring it up in the correct spot. Make sure to go to bug reports, feedbacks, harassment. Just go to the places where you would normally go to actually report a player or a specific activity that is illicit in the game. And do it on the official forums. Do it in-game if you actually spot the player. Screenshot your chat log so you can see the player's name, see that. And if you can actually get any sort of video proof and then screenshot those as well. A lot of the times, the GMs will not take that kind of evidence because it's suggestive and it could be edited. So it doesn't really serve that great of a purpose. But on the other hand, you could use it to raise awareness elsewhere, Reddit, the official forums, by showcasing that these kind of things are taking place. So as long as you're following the rules of the individual forums in Reddit, I think that would work just fine. Given how hard Crystalline Conflict was pushed and generally good reception, do you think Square Enix will take proactive action? So there's a bit of a conundrum with this. They're more likely to reactively ban people for doing it, assuming that they can actually prove it, than they are to take proactive steps to stop it in the first place. One of the main reasons for that is that Square Enix is very much against the idea of installing any sort of software on your computer that isn't Final Fantasy XIV itself. That's why they don't install an anti-cheat of some kind. They want players to know exactly what they're getting when they buy the game, when they download the game. It's very, very important to them that happens. And so because of that, tracking these kind of programs is going to come down to behavior. It's going to come down to them looking back at battle logs and seeing things that happen to them. For example, seeing that if you say, oh, a player was running around completely immune to all status effects, no matter what I hit them with, you know, and I have a stun, a heavy, and their debuffs show that they didn't have any sort of immunity to these things, but they just kept on ignoring it, then they can go and check, because what will realistically happen is those things will say they took effect. Or, well, one of two things will happen. Either it'll say they took effect and they'll see that they didn't actually suffer from the effect in the chat log. Very, very provable thing. Or it'll say it had no effect, but they can see via the chat and battle logs that the player had no resistances to it, so that shouldn't be happening. In which case, they would either choose to investigate it as a bug or as a cheat tool, or even both. So making sure to have as many points of reference of what happened is very, very, very important. But I do not think it'll be proactive. It will be reactive pretty much through and through. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Well met, Mr. Happy. Hello indeed. I was wondering what was your favorite place you have traveled to. So I'm not much of a traveler. I have a fear of flying. It's actually a combination of my D-type personality and a fear of heights. So D-type personality, since not everybody takes the same personality tests or has been classified the same way, I'm sure there's all sorts of different names for it. Essentially, I have a hard time relinquishing control of situations. So it's why I don't really like to, you know, smoke weed or anything. I don't like to feel like my senses are inhibited in any way. It actually sends me into a panic almost. And that includes things like roller coasters. You know, I have no control over that. A plane. I get mega anxiety and panic over things like that. So the takeoff and descent of a plane particularly just get me going really, really, really bad. So because of that, I don't actually like to travel. That being said, I have traveled, but not to that many places. I've flown across the United States. You know, I grew up in New Jersey. I live in California now. I've been to Texas for PAX South. I've been to Seattle. I've been to, you know, I lived in LA and San Diego. I visited them for cons as well. I've gone back to Boston for PAX East. Really nowhere in the Midwest. No, like Chicago or you know, just nowhere really. North Virginia I have been to once. North Carolina. Sorry, no. I've been to North Carolina once. And of course, like New York, Rhode Island, like the whole Northeast area. I've been to at least here or there, Philadelphia, you know, a state over or two. Normally a drive, though, not really a flight. As for leaving the country, I've been to Toronto, Vancouver, and Japan. Japan, on the way there, I had a 15-minute stopover in Hawaii. And I mean, of those locations, Japan is, of course, going to take the cake. I wasn't even there for very long. I was there for like 4 days. And it was like, when I say it was a long 4 days, it was a long 4 days because I was just trying to take in what I could. I wasn't really like going around and sightseeing or anything, but like the fact that I was there was genuinely like bringing me a lot of joy and excitement. So I guess in my brain, I almost kind of, how do I put it? Like I stretched the time that I did have there as much as I could. And I brought back as many stories and experiences as I could. And FanFest, of course, being one of them. The Final Fantasy XIV Eorzea Cafe was another big one. So all sorts of things. I mean, I've got tons of great stories. But I will say this. Canada was actually really good, specifically Vancouver. I actually really, really enjoyed Vancouver. So if you are going to Canada, you know, I definitely gets a thumbs up from me. And I also have some pretty good stories from my visit to Vancouver as well. So unfortunately, I haven't gone to some of the places I would like to go. London would be one I definitely want to go visit. Actually, quite a few places in Europe I'd like to go visit. And I've got some friends in Australia that are still, you know, pining to get me to go over there. So maybe one day. But for now, I'm probably going to stay put. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. How are you doing? Not a hello, but a polite thing to ask. So I'll give you a pass. Recently, I started using PF for Ultimates and Primal. So I talk a lot of shit about Primal. Primal Ultimate Pugs are chef's kiss. Oh, so good. If you want to get a Pug Ultimate clear, especially Ukab, oh, Primal is the place to go. I shit you not. It's the general party finder I get all my horror stories from. The general duty finder even I get all my horror stories from. But it is what it is. I get to phase 3 of Uwu and phase 2 of Ukab consistently. I know people say you need a static for ultimates, and I do have a group of friends who want to try, but they're not on Primal. Oh, tell them to transfer. No. Danny State of Travel's coming 6.18. I wonder if it's all right to practice progging ultimates and PF while waiting on... Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with practicing ultimates and PF. I mean, there's a good chance that you clear, in which case anyone who does clear is more prepared to help your group of friends in order to actually, you know, go all the way through. Yeah, no. That's a good idea, not a bad idea. That's a good idea, especially since you happen to be on what is, in my opinion, the top ultimate pugging data center in North America. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hope you're doing fine. Same to you. Thank you for asking a question. Probably 10 years late with this question. Well, we'll see. I started going through the story of 14 recently. I'm almost done with A Realm Reborn. Okay, 10 years is getting close to right. There's one thing I'd like to ask, which I'm not sure about. You know how after each primal you defeat, the Imperials are also, I guess, measuring the strength of the primal? Why did they do that? In order to see if the ultimate weapon could consume it? And yes, why would they need to do that? Isn't the weapon obviously capable? Yes, you're correct. So it's not because they are measuring to see if Ultima can absorb them. It's to get an accurate measure of how strong Ultima will be. Now, there is, of course, some other concerns. Remember, Ultima was unfinished at the time of those events taking place. It's not till closer to the events of Garuda where Ultima Weapon is actually complete. So if they deploy it early before all of its systems are fully functional, they could actually run into issues where the strength of the primals would be a genuine concern. Now, obviously, it doesn't seem that way by the time we see it, but again, you have to remember that while these events take place very, very quickly, it was not done at that point. So a lot of it is more so to gauge the overall strength that Ultima will actually be wielding, which they even then shoot short because they don't know the secret behind Ultima's power, which is shown to them in the finale of A Realm Reborn. So there's a couple of things there, but you're pretty much, you're close, like it's part of the reason, but also it extends a little bit past that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy, how's it going? It's going all right. You doing all right? I'm done. See, you asked me going, so I said it's going all right that time. I was wondering if you had some advice for someone who would like to improve their gameplay to the point of actually being able to do Savage Combat, has a particular issue with getting perfect rotations down. So I'm going to tell you right now, before I even read the rest of the question, don't worry about perfect. Worry about being able to perform a competent rotation while doing the mechanics competently. Those two things are a nice middle ground, a nice measured approach to not over-pressuring yourself to perform. Because even the best players are not always perfect. They'll miss a GCD here, they'll think they were in range there, they'll brain lapse and forget something here or there. It happens. No one's perfect. Well, that my brain simply cannot register and memorize the rotations to the degree that seem necessary for that content. Trust me. The things I see people get away with and clear Savage. The fact you're even thinking about this probably means you're better than those people. So I wouldn't worry all too much. I always say as soon as somebody is critical of their own play, going into harder content, there's a better chance they're a better player than the people who don't give a shit who go in anyway. So take that as a compliment because you care, which means you want to improve. And honestly, the only advice is keep on practicing. Big thing is to actually get in there and accept you're not going to be perfect. Because once you make progress in the fight, you'll stop thinking about it as much. And honestly, even when you start making progress, you're going to fuck up just because you're learning the fight. Like, everyone fucks up when they're learning the fight. No one goes in and is like, oh, I did my rotation perfect, 100 percentile, cleared it in one pull. I'm a god. Thank God I'm so good at this game. That just doesn't happen. It's just not the reality of it. So you're not incapable. You're just psyching yourself out. That's all it is. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hope you're enjoying the new patch. I have a PvP question for you. Sure. I'm liking the new PvP rework. I don't understand why there's so few actions for my jobs and why a lot of them change around. Why is it like that? Why can't we just use our PvE actions? So, main reason you can't use the PvE actions and using PvP is because PvE actions are not balanced for PvP. A long time ago, they ran into this issue where they introduced PvP and they had all of our PvE actions plus a few PvP actions to make sure there were things that were properly designed to interact between players. Okay. Then they started dividing our PvE skills into their PvE and PvP effects. So something that crowd controlled in PvE might not crowd control for as long in PvP, for example. That still ran into issues because they still had this massive kit. And a big thing with PvP is you don't want a massive kit of tools because you need to be able to not play like a PvE job. You know, you're not thinking of, oh, you know, trick in 10 and then I'll do my opener on them. You know, it's not like it's a static boss that won't be responding to what you do. You need to be able to go moment to moment and function moment to moment. And the PvE kits are just not built for that. So what did they do? They changed all the jobs to having PvP exclusive kits. And then they've simplified them and they've tried to push things together to make sure that you're not thinking about this like perfect dance of your hands while you're doing a rotation on a player who's also trying to kill you. It's about being able to take what you have stringed combos together like you would in any sort of competitive online game, but also make sure you have tools that are 100% able to be used in any situation so that you can outplay somebody. It's just about making sure they don't conflate what PvP needs with what PvE already does, because the two just don't make sense to go together. That's why there's so few skills. That's why the skills are kind of tailored very, very differently to the way that we play PvE, and we'll continue to do so. They'll still balance them. They'll probably add skills, take away skills here or there, you know, as they do with PvP and PvE. But yeah, so just look forward to the changes, but that's why it is what it is. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Mr. Happiness. Hi. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on the next 10 years of 14 Pro. I don't even know if I'm going to be alive in 10 years. With the way the world is falling apart right now, I just want to see 10 more years of my life at this point. I'm not thinking about where 14 is going to be in 10 years. What I'll tell you is this. It'll look higher res because of the texture thing that they're doing, but it'll still be the game that you've been playing for the past 10 years. They're never going to fundamentally change the game in such a way that it is not the game people subscribed to 10 years ago. It, at its core, needs to stay Final Fantasy XIV. They will try to do new types of content. They will test new ideas, job changes, raids, maybe new difficulties, new modes, PvP, all sorts of things. But every patch, expect a dungeon, MSQ, side quests, maybe relic, maybe a new dungeon type like the Criterion dungeons or Delubrum, exploratory stuff, Island Sanctuary, little features like adventure plates and portraits, more social related features. Expect to stay on the same course. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Happy. Quick question. What's the best 24-man raid, not only speaking mechanics, but lore-wise, theme-wise, OST-wise? Weeping City still stands pretty tall. But I think Orbone Monastery. I think the implications of Ultima the High Seraph and how that relates to the Ultima weapon and what we learned in A Realm Reborn. I think the potential correlations there between Oracite and the Heart of Sabik, things that we're still kind of trying to put all the pieces together exactly. I think that's a really, really good thing. It's also a great incorporation of Ivalice lore into Final Fantasy XIV while making it Final Fantasy XIV's lore and not just Ivalice's lore anymore. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Haps. How you doing? I'm doing okay. Thanks. Glad to hear it. A bit of a spoiler question. Okay. If I have to blank out the bottom, I will. So the new 24-man Thunder-themed first two bosses. You know what? The trailer shows all 4 bosses, so I honestly don't even consider this really a trailer. Or really a spoiler. I'm sorry. We have a Thunder God boss and Orbone. Yeah, Thunder God Cid. Orbone Monastery, and his ultimate had a symbol of all the 12. Did it now? I don't even remember that. Just wondering, is there a plot hole? Or are we meeting the same god twice? No. So Thunder God Cid. So all of the bosses other than Ultima the High Seraph in Orbone Monastery, those were heroes that infused themselves with Oracites. Very similar to what we see prior to that with, in a more extreme case, with Yasmat and Bagamnon. However, they're heroic with their Oracites, I suppose. So it doesn't quite work out exactly the same. But Cid is not actually the Thunder God. He's not one of the 12. Thunder God Cid is a moniker with which he has taken up, probably in the actual in the history that we're exploring in Ivalice, where we're looking at the 1,000 years ago, looking at the Gaugans, which were the predecessors to the Garleans, as far as I remember. They probably just had a god that they worshipped that probably very much built in the image of Rhalgr. We see that a lot. That's even addressed in the new 24-man, how we have fought gods that resemble or look like Rhalgr, and a lot of things we've speculated for quite a long time regarding different primals and different iterations of the 12 and how they might mix and match. It was really nice to get some confirmation on a lot of stuff that we've been discussing for quite some years now. But Thunder God Cid is not one of the 12. He is not a representation of the 12, but it's very possible that that god via Oracite was somehow inspired by Rhalgr and the 12. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Questions when they release data center travel to other worlds. Will Dungeons, Raid, Trials, PvP pull from all servers? No, that is not how that works. They will only pull from the individual data centers that you are pulling, that you are actually on. Ether still only plays with Ether, Primal still only plays with Primal, and Crystal still only plays with Crystal, for example. However, if a player from Primal visits Crystal, they will be subject to Crystal's Party Finder and Duty Finder as opposed to Primal since they're visiting another data center. No, they're not going to be pulling from all the regions, all the data centers on the region. 2, do you think Island Sanctuary could function as an instance house? I think some people will use it as an alternative to that, but I do not think it will have the functionality of housing in terms of the decorations and the actual functions of things you can do inside. You can place buildings down, you can let your minions roam free, and I think for some people that'll be enough. They don't really need all the fixtures that housing would normally come with, but it's not going to be an alternative to housing in terms of its actual functionality. Only been playing a year and a half, just finished Shadowbringer, and I'm starting to find the story boring. That's very surprising because Shadowbringer is definitely the pinnacle of the story. Every release and non-story expansion. No, that's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, hello. Other greetings. Excellent. I love it. This is in regards to OCE data centers. Oh boy. With the 90 days before people can retransfer coming up, there's talk of people leaving back for NA and JP. It has transferred and it's honestly been better than I expected. I'm guaranteed to get a house with many plots still open and decent, if small, community that helps each other. Been thinking about making a video discussing the potential benefits that people may find moving and would like some ideas. My question is, how would you incentivize people to make the switch? What would you try and sell them on? I think, honestly, you don't need to necessarily sell people on going there. You need to sell people who live in the regions that would play on that data center on your game. I think that is the top precedent that needs to be set up, because if you don't get people signing up and going to those data centers to fill them in the first place, then people are always going to kind of look at it being like, I don't really want to keep my character there. I don't really log in there. There's not enough people. It has to be a combination of everything. Otherwise, it'll always be kind of this, it'll never really take off, is how I feel. All right, we've had some pretty good questions and some pretty long questions in this video, so I'm going to lightning round the rest as best as I can. In other words, the video is probably still going to go on another 15 minutes, but hey, I'll probably save some time. What is your opinion on Ishgard housing? I don't really care about housing overall. However, you're specifically asking about the 75% going to FCs. I think functionally it makes sense because free company housing actually has some functionality behind it. You know, it has the submarines and it has all the individual houses or individual apartments inside or rooms that people can actually take for themselves. So it fills a lot more purposes than the personal housing does. But I think that no matter what, people are always going to want personal housing more than that, like collectively. Like even if everyone wants FC housing, all the people in the FC probably want their own house as well. So you have to think about that numerically. So the split really, while it makes sense functionally for the game, it probably doesn't make sense in terms of what the player base really wants. So that's the big one. Obviously, the housing bug is a whole nother story. They're already looking into it and addressing it. So it was fun to throw around a few little theories. Some people weren't really happy that I had some just like bullshit theories to just throw out there on the internet. I was like, dude, wouldn't even be surprised or willing to bet they just did it on purpose. They were like, you know what? Maybe we'll just have it roll to 0 because we can. They obviously confirmed that's not the case. But I wouldn't have been... So listen, somebody else said to me, they were like, listen, when you play the lottery in real life, is there always a winner? I was like, well, in Japan there is, and they're the ones making it. When they do a lottery system, to sell tickets for a concert, they don't randomly go, sorry, nobody won. Guess nobody's going to this concert this time. This is not how it works. But, you know, it is a fun little thing to mess around with. I do wonder if it's just a registration bug or if it really is a simple array error where they forgot to remove 0 from the value of the array. So it's possible for them to roll it and thus nobody wins the house. I think it's a registration bug because when you actually do get the 0 rolled, it tells people that there were no participants. So for me, that I wonder if it's like a volume thing. Like so many people were signing up for so many houses that somewhere in the system the registrations got lost or put in like an array that didn't belong or something of that capacity. I don't know. So there's that. Oh my God, there's a super long question here. For State of the Realm, when would the Melee show be? I don't know at the moment. There's a lot going on here in regarding Kaiten and everything. I can't get into that. I don't even play Samurai, so I'm not gonna mess around with this very well written thesis regarding Kaiten and Samurai right here. Let's see. What do we have here? Yeah, there's something that asks a spoiler about 6.1. Yeah, there's zero doubt about that. Those people from that cutscene, or those individuals from that cutscene. Let's see. The reason the Omega raids were fan service was because of lore. Yes, I know that, but it was terrible. It was awful. I don't care if you write it into the lore. You have the ability to write better lore because they're the ones making the lore. That's you. So a lot of time, like I do this too. I think we all do this to some capacity, where we look at the way things have already been done and go, "Oh, it's that way for a reason." When in reality, it just shouldn't be that way. You know what I mean? Like they had the control to do it in some way in the first place and chose not to. This would be one of those cases. Let's see. What happened to Tiamat? She probably went to Mara City, I'd have to imagine. So I can't wait for us to go there. This video is one of the like videos of time. I don't know what that means, but I actually didn't have that many questions left. I think the only one I actually skipped, I outright did skip a question, was what would I think about an idea for a certain job? Again, for those, it's very tough for me. I am not someone to validate somebody's thoughts, you know, in regards to what they could do in the game. Or what they should do in the game. You know, I'm not an official dev. I'm not someone who speaks from Square Enix on any sort of official capacity. And I accept that there's some responsibility that I have when I take people's ideas and I then present them to everyone else. Because a lot of the times people do take either jokes or just things that I put forth into the universe too seriously. And quite frankly, that shouldn't be my issue. The fact that it becomes the influencer's issue because people are too dense to get it is pretty ridiculous, in my opinion. Like, for example, when I said, oh, you know, wouldn't be surprised if they accidentally they made the zero thing intentionally for the housing. There are people out there who will go regurgitate that as if that's what happened. Not, it's a fun little thought like, oh, wouldn't even be surprised if they decided to do that. There's no, obviously there's no tone to be said over text, but the density of people, man. And then people come to me and they're like, hey, you look, well, you shouldn't say things like this. And it's like, who are you? Who are you? I'm just making a little bullshit joke on the internet. Oh God, people are just, hey, you know what? Some people got some clever quips. I'll give them that. Some people got some clever stuff. Some people, gotta touch grass a little bit. It's a little rough. But anyway, that's gonna be a wrap for this video because there are no more questions. So thank you to the random comments here. Some of them just commenting on stuff from last week. But I like this one. The top rated comment. You know you play 14 too much. When someone says they have a Peloton, you immediately think they play range physical. The irony is I do. And the other irony is that even though I know that I have a Peloton and that it's different from using Peloton, I still chuckle every time I say Peloton in my head because I'm like, haha, roll action. I don't know why. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. I'm going to get working on some of those YouTube shorts because, like I said, I have a few decent ideas. But anyway, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And I'll see y'all next week. Until then, take care.